Hi everybody. I am reviewing Chapter 6, Listening to Others, Being Good to the Speaker, in the Natural Speaker 8th edition for public speaking. This is one of the most important lessons that you can learn in public speaking and for communication in your future lives. Listening to others, and I'm sure that listening to others is not what you thought public speaking was about. But on page 91 it starts out, it says, both as a speaker and as an audience member, effective listening is critical to your success and enjoyment of public speaking. So let's begin by looking at the basics of the listening process. Okay? So the process can be better understood by examining the 5 steps of listening. So the 5 steps of listening are receiving, attending, interpreting, evaluating, and responding. So let's start with the first one. Receiving. The first step to the listening process is that of receiving or hearing sounds from the environment. Hearing is limited to the physiological process of receiving and processing these sounds. The next step to this process is attending to. Attending to primarily one of the sounds from many of you are receiving and disregarding or filtering out all the others. For instance, you might choose to focus your attention on the words of the speaker in class and filter out the sounds of people whispering and air conditioning and all that. And the third step is interpreting. It says once you've selected the focus of your attention, the third step in the listening process is interpreting or assigning meaning to the sounds you've selected. When listening to a speaker, you must determine the meaning of the words or encode what the speaker is attempting to communicate in the speech. Verbal cues such as tone of voice, vocal variety, and rate of speech. And then fourth step is evaluating. Not only are you required to understand what the speaker is attempting to communicate, but you must also think about the message in more critical terms that include evaluating the reasoning used and accuracy of the information given, and the credibility of the evidence presented. Listening is more than just understanding what the speaker said. It involves evaluation of the speaker content as well. And the last step is responding. You might not always agree with or accept what the speaker is saying, but you can communicate that you are listening and understand what is being said. Eye contact, smiling, nodding can communicate interest, encouragement, and agreement. Frowning, shaking your head from side to side, or long glances at your watch can convey disagreement or boredom. So, many of us think that we're fantastic speakers, and I know for myself, and still until I started teaching this, that I definitely wasn't as good of a listener as I thought I was. And many times now I will be in social gatherings and look at people and think, my God, they don't listen. And an example that I give of this is how many times you get together with your friends or loved ones and everybody's talking all at once. Nobody's like sitting there listening. And you walk away and you have no idea what anybody said. And a good example of this is I can remember I used to have my laptop on my kitchen table, and I would think I was listening to my children as I would type away. But then I realized I really wasn't until I took the computer and now it's in another room. You need to stop what you're doing and look at a person as they're speaking. And I can't tell you enough that the biggest gift that you can give to somebody is to listen to them. So on page 92 it talks about barriers to listening. The first one is abundance of messages, okay? Our environment is so busy, and a barrier to listening is the abundance of messages. We have messages coming from our family, from our work, from just everything, especially in today's age, okay? So that can really inhibit you from actually listening. The other thing is external noise. I know for myself that I'm not a good phone talker unless I can sit and actually listen and concentrate on what is being said because of all of the noises around me. And the third barrier is rapid thought. I'm one of those people that I'm going 210 all the time. I have 1,000 things going through my head. So that can be a huge barrier to actually listening to somebody. And then judgmental frame of reference. If you've already put yourself in a frame of mind with you're already prejudged, that can definitely put a barrier to your listening to others. And an example of that I give is last year when I was attending town meetings because they were cutting my children's educational budget, and I already went into these meetings with a very judgmental frame of mind, like, are you kidding me? I pay tons of taxes. Where is this money going? So that kind of inhibited me from listening to what they were saying. And then a short attention span. I think we can all be guilty of that at some point, okay? And then the final barrier to effective listening on page 94 is listening requires effort. It really, really does. As you learned it says, as you've learned earlier in this chapter, effective listening requires that you invest effort in 5 specific tasks: receiving, attending to, interpreting, evaluating, and responding to the speaker's message. Each one of these factors demands that you place attention and energy into these important undertakings and put aside other competing needs and desires. It's often easier to drift off and think about those activities you prefer to be doing, or people you'd rather be with, or maybe just zone out and drift into a comfortable nothingness. But as an audience member, you have a responsibility to choose to be present, attentive, receptive, and responsive. All of these activities require your effort, but remember, your efforts to listen can increase your knowledge, widen your scope of understanding, and bless the speaker in ways you can't even begin to imagine. Because really, when somebody listens to you, it feels fantastic, okay? You don't learn anything new when you're talking, but when you're listening, really listening, your life can change for the better. It's totally worth the effort. Okay, on page 94, bridges to listening. As I've seen, there are many barriers to effective listening, but there are actions you can take to improve listening skills and actually bridge the gaps and shortcomings that would normally prevent you and the speaker from connecting in a meaningful way, okay? Excuse me. So the first one is prepare to listen. Obviously, when you come to my speech class every week, whether it be a full course semester or an intense summer course, I expect you to prepare to listen, okay? It says the first thing you can do to be an effective listener is to prepare to listen before you speak, before the speaker even begins to talk. If you know the topic of this speech ahead of time, you might want to briefly research the topic. Nothing big or in depth, but enough to know the basics of the topic, okay? Of course, the internet is helpful. Another way you can prepare to listen is to arrive to the auditorium or classroom early so you can find a seat in the front. The closer you are, the easier it will be to hear and see the speaker. And on page 95, it says keep an open mind. Definitely try and keep an open mind. Sometimes it's very hard, but this can be a huge bridge to open yourself up to listen in speaking and in everyday life. And then on page 95, it says support the speaker. It says this might sound strange, but an audience member, you are in a position to do more than just listen openly to a speaker. You can also support the speaker's attempts to communicate with you. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with the speaker's message. It does mean, however, that you can focus your attention on the speaker, smile at your acknowledgement of his efforts, and nod occasionally with statements you agree with or find interesting. Okay? Then it says identify specific purpose and main points. The purpose of public speaking is for the speaker to communicate a message to the audience. As an audience member, your willingness and ability to identify the specific purpose of main points of a speech are among your primary responsibilities as you listen to the speaker's words. And going along with that, on page 96, it says recognize nonverbal cues. Because as I talk about throughout the semester, pick up on those body languages or the tone of voice of the speaker, okay? You will listen more effectively if you attend to the nonverbal cues of the speaker, because the messages given by the speaker can be communicated as much as the speaker's tone of voice, facial expressions, and body movement as by the words themselves. In fact, many times we tend to rely more on nonverbal cues of the speaker than the verbal content we interpret the communication of others. Okay? The speaker's nonverbal cues should match and reinforce her verbal communication. If the speaker is telling her audience that they'll enjoy volunteering as a big sister, her tone of voice and facial expressions should reinforce her words. Then it says take notes. You can take notes if you want. Everybody processes things differently. And identify personal benefits. What can you get out of listening to somebody? Then on page 97, under lesson 6.4, it says the benefits of listening. Learning about new topics. You can open yourself to a whole new world of something you never even knew. And on page 98, appreciating others, evaluating speeches. And by evaluating, it will help you become a better speaker in your speaking career. Or speaking whenever you have to speak. And lastly, on page 99, it talks about another benefit is being good to others. So that wraps up chapter 6. And the exam questions that you really would want to pay attention to in this chapter are lesson 6.1, the process. As we talked about, there's 5 steps. 6.2, barriers. 6.4, benefits. And again, the listening process, and the benefits that you can get out of it, and the barriers and the bridges. And make sure you know the difference between the two. Alright, I hope you become a better speaker, or rather a better listener from this chapter.